Hi, my name is Catherine, and I am 32 years old. These words, spoken mentally or aloud, have recently become a kind of anchor for me, a confirmation that I still exist, even though the familiar world around me has cracked. This collapse began in early October, when I, Catherine Emerson, was suddenly and unceremoniously asked to vacate my cozy office with a view of the bustling metropolis at the marketing firm Vector. I was handed an envelope with my severance pay, and avoiding direct eye contact, they told me the company was forced to undergo a corporate restructuring. I knew it was a lie, a brazen and cynical one, designed to cover up someone's cowardice. I had just finished working on a major project, colossal in its ambitions and budget, and it had failed spectacularly, plunging into the abyss of market rejection. The thing is, and this thought echoed with the bitter bile in my temples, the failure was by no means my fault. I was the architect who built the strategy, brick by brick, but other people, higher up the hierarchical ladder, with their thoughtless decisions, mercilessly destroyed the structure being erected. They ignored my reports, rejected analytics, guided by momentary impulses, and ultimately brought the entire pyramid down. However, in any disaster, a scapegoat is necessary, someone to take all the heat, and that someone turned out to be me. That day, I returned home in a state of deep stupor, as if the lights had been turned off inside me and all the doors locked. My mind refused to comprehend what had happened, and my hands, on their own, performed the usual rituals: the key in the lock, the creak of the door, the bag thrown onto the couch. I had some savings, accumulated over the years for a rainy day, and now, surveying them with my mind's eye, I realized with relief that they would be enough to live for several months without immediately plunging into the abyss of poverty. And I honestly admit, through the numbness, another strange feeling was breaking through: relief. Yes, I had lost my job, but along with it, my boss had also disappeared, a veritable nightmare from office nightmares, who always demanded the impossible and found flaws in the most impeccable work. I was exhausted to the last nerve ending, squeezed like a lemon, and now this sudden stop provided a respite. I decided to take a small, well-deserved pause, a small vacation for the soul, to pull myself together, and then, with renewed strength, rush to find a new job, a new point of application for my efforts. Then, gathering my courage, I dialed my family's number and, trying to speak evenly without hysterics, told them what had happened. My mother's reaction was instantaneous and predictable, like the movement of clockwork. "You should call David and apologize." Her voice sounded through the receiver, leaving no room for discussion. "Ask if you can move in with him." David was my ex-boyfriend, the man I had broken up with for good 6 months ago. The reason was his ultimatum. He wanted me to give up my career and turn into a housewife, a keeper of his hearth. I said no, and that no cost me our relationship, and now my mother thought I should crawl back on my knees. "I am not calling David," I replied with cold firmness. "Mom, you need a place to live if you can't afford rent," she persisted. "I can afford the rent," I retorted, feeling myself boiling over. "I have savings." The next call, responding to my trouble, was from my older sister, Madison. "Dad's company is hiring," she said in a businesslike manner. "I can get you a job there. It's entry level, but it's something." Me, a marketing professional with 8 years of experience, a lead project manager, was supposed to be happy with a courier or junior clerk position. "I am not taking an entry-level job," I replied, trying to hide my irritation. "Beggars can't be choosers, Catherine," she shot back with a cold sneer. Then my brother, Jacob, called, his voice sounding condescending and paternally instructive. "Perhaps this is a sign that you should focus on finding a husband instead of chasing unrealistic career goals." I was at a loss for words and simply hung up, feeling hot tears of helplessness streaming down my cheeks. Over the next few weeks, my family began to treat me differently, like a leper, as if my failure was a contagious disease they could catch from the slightest contact. At traditional family dinners, they bombarded me with advice I hadn't asked for and didn't want. Mom, with pursed lips, taught me to dilute dishwashing liquid with water to make it last longer. Dad, without looking up from his plate, recommended I walk everywhere instead of driving to save money on gas. Madison, with an expert air, initiated me into the intricacies of coupon strategies as if I were a dim-witted teenager encountering the realities of life for the first time. One Sunday, I came for dinner, and to my horror, discovered that no one wanted to sit next to me. They essentially left empty chairs on both sides of me, creating an invisible but palpable quarantine barrier, as if I had the plague they were afraid of catching. It was humiliating, deeply and piercingly so, but I clenched my teeth, kept my mouth shut, and endured that endless dinner, swallowing food that seemed tasteless and forcing down the lump of resentment rising in my throat. The only glimmer, the only thin thread that helped me not to lose my mind completely was my Friday ritual, a small and incomprehensible tradition to anyone. Every Friday, exactly at 6 in the evening, I would go into the same cozy little store near my home and buy lottery tickets, always exactly $10 worth, no more, no less. I had been doing this for years, and the old guy behind the counter, Mr. Archibald, already knew me. "It's your week, Catherine," he would say every time, handing over the coveted tickets and smiling widely. "I can feel it." My family, of course, knew about this weakness of mine and considered it an amusing quirk, further proof of my lack of seriousness. I didn't care what they thought. It was my money, and this little weekly ritual, this tiny hope for a miracle, made me happy, giving me the strength to live through another week. In early December, as the city began to dress itself in the tinsel of Christmas lights, I, as usual, bought my Friday tickets. I returned home, made myself a simple dinner, watched a series, and completely forgot about them, putting the bags aside. I remembered them only the next morning over a cup of coffee, and lazily reaching for my laptop, checked the winning numbers online. I looked at my ticket, then at the screen where the combination of numbers was shining, then back at my ticket, not believing my own eyes. All 6 numbers, every single one, matched perfectly. I had won. I had won $120 million. I sat there, staring at the phone, for probably 20 minutes, not moving and barely breathing, trying to comprehend the incredible scale of what had happened. Somewhere in the depths of my mind, a cold, calculating glimmer flashed. After taxes, I would have about $70 million left. My first almost reflexive impulse, coming from the depths of the old trusting me, was to call my mom, to just blurt out this staggering news, share this miracle with my closest family, as one is supposed to do in a family. I even picked up my smartphone, cold and smooth, and started dialing the familiar number, obeying the momentary urge. But my finger froze over the screen, and in my head, like a film reel, frames from the last 2 months flashed. I thought about how they had treated me, those eloquent empty chairs on both sides of me at the dinner table, those humiliating, ego-bruising tips about diluted soap and the magical power of coupons. I remembered every look of theirs, full of regret, irritation, and condescension, the look at a failure, a burden, a living embodiment of family shame. Slowly, with a sense of making a choice, I put the phone back on the table. Sooner or later, I would tell them, I vowed to myself, but not now, not at this moment. I decided to wait until Christmas to turn this news into a surprise, the most luxurious and unexpected gift under the tree. I would present it to them then in the atmosphere of the holiday, and I would help everyone washing away their past grievances with a golden shower of my well-being. I mentally painted idyllic pictures. Here I am paying off Madison's huge mortgage. Here I am setting up a targeted trust fund for Jacob's children's college education. And here I am ensuring a carefree and comfortable retirement for my parents. Of course, they had treated me terribly, but they were still my family, my flesh and blood. I naively believed that once they found out about the money, all misunderstandings would melt away like smoke, and everything would return to normal. No, It would become even better than it had ever been. The next practical step was a visit to a financial advisor who specialized specifically in lottery winnings. His name was Richard, and his services were exorbitantly expensive. But on specialized forums, he was called the best of the best. "Congratulations," he said when we met in his austere, minimalist-style office. "Now let's talk about how to handle this wisely." He presented me with a multi-tiered plan including diversified investments, protective trusts, and complex tax strategies. And then, leaning back in his leather chair, he gave me a stern warning. "Your family, Catherine, will react to this news in a certain way," he said, looking at me directly. "People change when such sums of money are involved. Be prepared for that." "They are my family," I replied with a slight challenge. "They will be genuinely happy for me." Richard just looked at me meaningfully with a gaze that clearly said he had heard this countless times before, and it never ended well. For the next few weeks, I devoted myself with almost childlike delight to planning my Christmas announcement. I rehearsed my speech in front of the mirror, selecting the right words that would sound sincere and generous. I imagined their faces at the moment I would utter that phrase over and over again, their shock, their joy, their boundless gratitude that would erase all past grievances. And then, a week before Christmas, just as I was pondering the exact moment during the evening to make my announcement, my mom called. "Catherine, we need to talk," she said, and her voice was cold and calm, almost businesslike. "We've decided it would be better if you didn't come for Christmas this year." I felt as if I had been punched in the stomach with full force, knocking all the air out of me and leaving only the physical pain of betrayal. "What?" I managed to exhale. "You don't have a job." My mother's voice sounded detached, as if she were reading a verdict. "You have no prospects. You've been so negative lately, and frankly, we don't want that kind of energy at Christmas. Your attitude could ruin the holiday for everyone else." She paused, and I heard her quiet but clear whisper, "Mom, Catherine, your failures are contagious. We don't want it affecting the rest of the family. Nothing personal. We just think it's for the best." And she hung up. I sat there clutching the phone in my numb fingers, unable to believe my ears. To finish myself off completely, I texted Jacob, "Did you know Mom disinvited me from Christmas?" "Yes," came the reply almost instantly. "We all agreed. Sorry, but you've been kind of a downer lately. We want to have a good holiday." Then I texted Madison, "Do you mind if I don't come for Christmas?" Her reply was no less ruthless. "To be honest, yes, Mom is right. You've been gloomy and it's upsetting everyone. Maybe you should use this time to sort your life out." I felt like crying. Everything inside me was screaming in pain and humiliation, demanding release in bitter tears. But instead, I laughed. I laughed so hard, so hysterically and bitterly, that tears started flowing down my face on their own, tears of absurdity and complete clarity. I laughed because I had almost told them. I, the holder of $70 million, had almost shared my wealth with people who considered me such a total failure that they didn't even want to see me at their Christmas table. The next day, driven by a newfound freedom, I went to a premium car dealership where the air smelled of expensive leather and car wax. Glancing over the gleaming chrome and lacquered hoods, I chose the one, with a velvety black shade and lines that breathed power and speed. "I'll take it," I told the manager as he began his rehearsed spiel about credit programs. "In cash." $60,000. A sum that once seemed astronomical was now just a line in my banking app. I drove off the lot, rolling down the window and breathing in the cold winter air, feeling not just great, but reborn, as if the heavy lead cloak of a failure had finally fallen from my shoulders. That same evening, as I had anticipated, Madison called. Her voice was sharp and prickly. "Mom said you bought a new car. How much did you spend?" She blurted out without preamble. "I had the means," I replied evasively, enjoying the frustration I sensed in her silence. She laughed, but her laugh was unpleasant, rattling, full of caustic mockery. "You're spending your last savings on a car? That's so stupid, Catherine. When your landlord evicts you for non-payment, You'll have to live in that car." Without dignifying her with a rebuttal, I simply hung up, cutting off her poisonous monologue mid-sentence. I spent Christmas alone, but by no means in despondency. Instead of sitting within four walls feeling sorry for myself, I went to a luxurious country club, a place I had always dreamed of but considered unattainably expensive. I ordered tender lobster, a juicy filet mignon, and a bottle of aged Bordeaux. I sat by a huge fireplace in a hall full of elegant decorations and carefree, celebrating rich people. The bill was over $300, but I didn't care. I had $70 million. I could afford one truly good Christmas dinner. 2 weeks after the holidays, having gained inner confidence, I dialed the number of an elite real estate agency. "I need a realtor who works with serious buyers," I told the secretary. "I'm looking for a luxury mansion." My new agent, who introduced himself as Robert, listened to my wishes. A prestigious area, no budget constraints. He didn't flinch, as many others would have at such a statement, but merely nodded with professional interest. "I have a few properties that might interest you." For the next 2 weeks, we drove around the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, viewing estates, large and not so large, ultra-modern and classically styled. Robert showed me everything that fit my truly royal price range. And then I saw it. A beautiful, like a palace from a dream, mansion in an exclusive, verdant neighborhood. $25 million. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a huge open-plan kitchen, a turquoise pool, and a manicured garden. It was perfect. "I'll take it," I declared, watching as Robert, usually unflappable, nearly dropped his tablet when I made the full payment in cash. I hired professional movers who packed and transported my modest belongings from my old rented apartment in a day, and immediately hired a renowned decorator to furnish the new house with such taste that it seemed to have stepped out of a glossy magazine. I didn't say a word about my move to anyone in the family. In early March, as the city was just beginning to thaw, I moved. My new home was magnificence embodied in stone and glass. Everything in it was exactly as I wanted. My personal space, my own fortress. No one could tell me what to do or make me feel like a failure. A week after my move, I got a call from my old landlord. "Catherine, your sister came to the apartment looking for you," he reported excitedly. "She was very surprised to find new tenants there. She wanted to know where you'd gone." Thanking him, I hung up and waited. I was absolutely sure Madison would call soon, and so it happened 2 days later. First her name lit up on the screen, then my mother's. I let the phone ring, watching this nervous vibrational dance, and finally answered when Mom called for the 5th time in a row. "Where are you?" Her voice sounded, devoid of a greeting or any signs of concern, filled with nothing but pure anger. "No. Hello. No. How are you?" I mentally retorted sarcastically. "You moved out of the apartment. Where did you go?" For a second, a naive, weak hope flickered in me. Were they actually worried? Did they want to make sure I was okay? To invite me back? "If you're homeless," Mom continued, shattering my illusions, "you can go to a shelter or sell that stupid car you bought and use the money for a security deposit somewhere." That was her concern. "I have a place to live, Mom," I replied coldly. "I don't need a shelter. Don't worry about it." And I hung up, severing the last thread. A couple of weeks later, as I was enjoying the silence in my living room, a persistent, sharp doorbell rang. Approaching the window, I saw Madison frozen on my porch with an expression of silent shock on her face. She was slowly running her eyes over the facade of the house, with its perfectly trimmed hedges and tall carved doors, and her mouth was literally agape in astonishment. I opened the door, letting in a stream of cold air. "How did you find my address?" I asked, though a terrible guess was already forming in my mind. "Did you forget that my husband works for the police?" She shot back with a triumphant challenge in her voice. "I asked him to look up your information." And, without waiting for an invitation, she literally swept into the hallway, passing me like an unwelcome draft. Her eyes greedily scanned the space. The high ceilings with moldings, the expensive designer furniture, the carefully selected artworks on the walls. With every moment, her face grew paler, and her eyes showed a mixture of envy and disbelief. "Who did you rob?" she finally whispered, and in that whisper, there was no joking bewilderment, but icy horror. In response, I silently took out my phone and found in the gallery that very cherished photo, a picture of the winning lottery ticket, where all 6 numbers perfectly matched the jackpot combination. She took the phone with trembling fingers, looked at the screen, then at me, and stared at the image again. Her face froze, turned to stone, like a mask from which all human emotions had been erased. She didn't utter a word of congratulations, nor did she say she was happy for me. She simply handed back the phone, turned sharply, and walked out of my house without another word, slamming the door with such force that the crystal pendants in the chandelier rattled. I knew perfectly well what would happen next. My premonitions came true the next day when my phone literally exploded with calls and messages. Mom called 4 times in a row, and on the 4th, I finally picked up. "What do you want?" I asked in an even, emotionless voice. "Madison told us about the lottery." Her voice sounded agitated and imperious. "We need to discuss this as a family. Your father insists on an urgent meeting." "Fine," I agreed, feeling a strange calm. "Anyone who wants can come here on Sunday afternoon." I dictated my address to her and hung up, not allowing for further inquiries. Sunday arrived. Right at the appointed time, my entire family lined up at my front door. My parents, Madison with her husband, Jacob with his wife. They appeared on the doorstep, looking around timidly as if they couldn't believe their eyes. We settled in the spacious living room, filled with expensive furniture and surrounded by luxurious trinkets. They perched on the edges of the sofas, and all their heavy, expectant gazes were fixed on me. "I want to say that in December, I won the lottery," I began without preamble. $120 million. After taxes, I have about 70 left. A deathly silence fell in the room, thick and ringing, as I watched the emotions shift on their faces, from disbelief to greedy realization of the unimaginable sum. And then they all started talking at once, their voices merging into a chaotic chorus of demands. "Family support is incredibly important," Mom declared, trying to inject warmth into her voice. "We've always been there for you." "My children urgently need college funds," Jacob chimed in. "You know how expensive education is these days." "My mortgage is an unbearable burden," Madison added. "It would be wonderful if someone could help me with that." None of them uttered words of congratulations. No one said they were happy for me. There were only persistent, almost demanding requests for money. "I'll think about it," I coldly parried, standing up to signal the conversation was over. "But for now, I'd like you all to leave." They looked shocked, but rose obediently and headed for the exit. As I let them out, I heard my mother whisper to my father, "She will help us. She has to. We're family." For the entire next week, my phone was flooded with messages. Mom sent my childhood photos with captions like, "Remember how we took care of you?" Madison wrote long, elaborate messages about how much she had always loved me and how close we were as children. Even my father, usually sparing with words, wrote a short, "I'm proud of you." Jacob persistently reminded me about his children and how important it was to give them a good education. I read every message, feeling growing bitterness, and didn't reply to any. Then I decided to conduct one more, final test. I sent a message to the general family chat. "I'm thinking of donating all the money to charity." My phone rang in less than 30 seconds. It was my father, and he was screaming into the receiver, his voice trembling with uncontrollable rage. "Have you lost your mind? You're going to give away millions to some strangers? You're acting like a complete fool." Mom snatched the phone from my father's hands, and her voice, piercing and distorted with hatred, filled the speaker. "You've completely lost it, Catherine. What's wrong with you?" she screamed, and behind her I heard Jacob's voice, cold and calculating. We need to have her examined, declare her incompetent, take control of the money before she squanders it all. I looked at their distorted grimaces on the video call screen, at this collection of angry, desperate, and demanding faces. It became completely clear. They didn't care about me at all. They were only interested in my money, this abstract sum that had turned them into a pack of prey-hungry predators. "I won't give a single cent to any of you," I said with icy calm, and immediately ended the call, and then methodically, one by one, blocked all their numbers, severing the last threads connecting me to what was once called a family. After that, the real siege began. My family started showing up at my house in person, like a delegation of dissatisfied creditors. My parents came first. They rang the doorbell persistently without a break for a full 10 minutes, and I watched them from behind a translucent curtain. My mother was sobbing, pressing a handkerchief to her face, and my father was pacing back and forth on the porch in a rage, clenching his fists. In the end, they left, leaving behind an oppressive feeling of emptiness. The next day, it was Jacob and his wife's turn. The same picture, endless ringing, loud, demanding knocking on the massive oak door. I remained inside, motionless, turning into a silent ghost in my own home. Then Madison appeared with her husband. The same persistence, the same demands to be let in, the same attempts to knock not only on the door, but on my conscience. This went on for a whole week. Different family members took turns appearing on the doorstep, pleading, persuading, trying to explain everything and fix everything. But I never opened the door. However, I was aware that they wouldn't stop. Now they knew where I lived, and this address had become a target, a focal point for their unbridled greed. They would return again and again, demanding, trying to take away what was rightfully mine. And then I made the final, fateful decision. I was leaving. I contacted a realtor in Austin, Texas, far enough to discourage my family from dropping by for a visit whenever they felt like it. I told her I urgently needed a house and that budget was not an issue. She, showing remarkable efficiency, found me a wonderful place in just a week. I made the purchase immediately and then just as quickly put my current mansion up for sale, hiring a third-party company for this so I wouldn't have to be personally present for showings and encounter anyone. 2 weeks later, in the dead of night when the city was asleep, I carried out my plan. Professional movers, hired for a generous fee, silently and quickly loaded all my belongings into a van while the neighbors weren't watching. By dawn, there was no trace of me left. I left for Austin and moved into my new home. It was smaller than the previous one, but just as beautiful and cozy. More importantly, no one here knew who I was or what fortune lay in my bank account. I changed my phone number, deleted all my social media accounts, cutting off all channels of communication with the old world, except for one single person. My Aunt Lisa, my mother's younger sister who lived in Seattle and had always been radically different from the rest of the family in her kindness, understanding, and lack of mercenary interest. We'd been especially close when I was a teenager. I dialed her number and explained everything: the lottery, the family's ugly reaction, and my forced flight. "Good for you," she said without a hint of doubt. "They don't deserve your money or your time." "Can you keep my number a secret?" I asked. "I still want to talk to you, but I don't want anyone else to know how to find me." "Your secrets are safe, dear," she assured me. And with this new, quiet life in Austin, I finally had time to think about what I really wanted to do with my money. I had been so focused on protecting it from my family that I hadn't considered other, much brighter possibilities. I decided to establish a foundation, create a charitable organization that would be a solid anchor of salvation for people caught off guard by life's storms. I imagined those who, like me once, had suddenly lost their job and support, single mothers desperately struggling to make ends meet, talented students for whom college remained an unattainable dream due to lack of funds, those on the brink of eviction or already battling homelessness. This idea filled my new life with meaning, outshining the glitter of the millions. I hired a small but dedicated staff, rented a bright, spacious office in downtown Austin, and with my characteristic thoroughness, built all the processes, turning a noble impulse into a well-oiled machine. In official documents, I used only my patronymic and last name, creating a subtle but reliable barrier that would make it harder for my family to track me down. But most importantly, I immersed myself in the foundation's work, not limiting myself to signing checks. I personally met with those we helped, spent hours listening to their stories, delved into their difficulties, and in their eyes, full of gratitude, I found the genuine satisfaction that no successful marketing campaign in my past could provide. It was deeper, more human, more real. A few months after my move, the foundation held its first charity gala dinner, an elegant event designed to attract attention and funds from wealthy sponsors. Wearing an elegant but understated dress, I mingled easily with the guests, talking about our projects. While talking to one of the key benefactors, a stranger approached me. "Catherine Grant," he said, and his voice held no obsequiousness, only confidence. "I'm Michael Torres. I own a tech company here in Austin. I've read about your foundation's work. It's impressive." His gaze was direct and interested. "I'd like to discuss funding some of your programs, if you don't mind." Our conversation lasted for over an hour. He turned out to be not only smart and successful, but also, which was rare, genuinely eager to help, seeing it not as an opportunity for tax deductions, but as a genuine human duty. As the evening drew to a close, he, slightly embarrassed, asked, "Would you like to have dinner sometime?" And so we started dating. At first, it was business dinners discussing the foundation, then shared cups of coffee, and soon regular dates that had nothing to do with charity. It was easy with Michael. He made me laugh until I cried. He knew how to listen, and most precious of all, he never asked for anything for himself. 6 months after our first meeting during a modest dinner at his house, he simply took a small velvet box out of his pocket and asked that very question, and I said yes. Around the same time, Aunt Lisa called to share news from my past. "Your family is going crazy trying to find you," she informed me, lowering her voice. "Your mother calls me every week asking for news. They're telling everyone that you stole their money, that you owe them, that you betrayed the family. Your mother is playing the victim, pretending not to understand why you cut off all contact." "Do they know I moved?" I clarified. "They know you're not in the old house. Someone told them it was sold, but they have no idea where you disappeared to. Good job, dear. Your mother even tried to hire a private detective, but it seems you covered your tracks so well that even he was powerless." I felt a wave of relief. My plan had worked. I was truly free. We talked a little more, and I again felt gratitude for having at least one relative who valued me for myself, not for my bank account. My wedding was approaching. We were planning a modest, intimate ceremony. No drama, no demands, no people thirsting only for my money. Just me, Michael, and those few who sincerely wished us happiness. The wedding was scheduled for early June, when the air in Texas becomes thick and sweet with the scent of blooming magnolias. Michael and I had decided from the very beginning that everything would be quiet, intimate, truly ours. We planned to gather only 20 people, our closest friends, a few of his business partners who had over time become a real support, and of course, Aunt Lisa, who flew in specially from Seattle. We rented a charming venue with a manicured garden where the ceremony was to take place under the shade of old oaks. Nothing ostentatious or pretentious, only an elegant and cozy atmosphere creating a sense of genuine closeness. This was to be the kind of wedding where every guest truly knows and loves the bride and groom, where everyone is sincerely happy to share this day. No distant relatives whose interest would be limited to the size of the envelope. No family members with whom I was connected only by burdensome memories and who would suddenly show uncharacteristic concern. Only those to whom we were dear as people. Lisa arrived 2 days before the ceremony. I met her at the airport, and she, seeing me, hugged me so tightly and for so long, as if trying to convey through that embrace all the support I had lacked all these months. That same day, settling down with a cup of coffee in a cozy cafe, she, sighing, shared the latest news from my past. "Your mother is still telling everyone who will listen that you abandoned them," Lisa began quietly. "She writes long posts on Facebook about ungrateful children, about all the sacrifices she made for you. Of course, she doesn't mention the lottery money a single word, creating the impression that you deprived them of support for no reason." "And the others?" I asked, feeling a cold knot tightening in my chest. "Madison is bitter. She tells everyone who will listen that you are selfish and a cruel person. Jacob is keeping quiet, but according to Mom, he's having financial difficulties. He apparently was already counting on that money for his children's college." "He has a job," I retorted coldly. "He can save like everyone else." "I know, dear. I'm just sharing what I've heard." "Do they know about the wedding?" I asked with sudden anxiety. "Not from me. I haven't said a word to them." "Thank you," I exhaled, and Lisa, reaching her hand across the table, squeezed my palm in hers. "You made the right choice, Catherine. Leaving people who valued you only for your money was the wisest decision of your life." The wedding day arrived. The weather was perfect, the sun gently illuminating the garden, and the flowers smelled even sweeter than usual. Everything was exactly as we had dreamed. Michael and I stood before our 20 guests and exchanged vows, simple, honest words about love, partnership, and building our life together, step by step. No one objected. No one caused drama. No one demanded anything from me. It was absolutely, flawlessly perfect. At the reception, I danced with Michael, talked with friends, and laughed so sincerely and easily as I hadn't laughed in many years. Aunt Lisa gave a short but heartfelt toast about the importance of finding one's happiness and surrounding oneself with people who truly care about you. Late in the evening, when the last guests had left, Michael and I sat on the terrace of our hotel room, wrapped in the silence and warmth of the Texas night. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his hand on mine. "I mean, your family isn't here." "I'm more than okay," I replied, looking at the stars. "If they were here, this day wouldn't be about us. They would be demanding money, causing problems and poisoning every moment." "Are you sure you won't ever want to try to reconnect?" I thought for a moment, going over everything that had happened in my memory. "I've thought about it. A lot. No. They showed me their true faces. When I lost my job, they treated me as worthless. They canceled my Christmas invitation, afraid my failure was contagious. And when they found out about the money, they didn't congratulate me or ask how I was. They immediately moved to demands." Michael nodded, his gaze full of understanding. "I just wanted to make sure you're confident in your decision and that it brings you peace." "I am completely confident," I said, and there wasn't a shadow of doubt in those words. The months following our quiet wedding were extremely busy, but it was a pleasant, constructive fatigue that filled each day with special meaning. The foundation, the child of my new life, was growing and strengthening rapidly, casting an ever wider net of help, and with each week we reached more and more people caught in the whirlwind of life's adversities. We managed to fund full scholarships for 50 talented students on the verge of dropping out, prevented the eviction of 30 families, giving them not only financial support but also hope, and provided professional retraining for over 100 people who had lost their jobs and faith in themselves. I devoted 4 days a week to the foundation, and my responsibilities went far beyond formal leadership. I personally met with applicants, delved into the smallest details of each case, spending long hours studying documents and stories, and made the final decisions myself on who and how exactly we could help, turning my activity not into routine work, but into genuine service that truly changed destinies for the better. Michael's company became a reliable partner, generously funding several of our key programs, and his authority helped convince other influential leaders of Austin's tech giants to follow his example and make substantial donations, as a result of which, the foundation was gradually turning into the powerful and effective organization I had once dreamed of in my wildest fantasies. One evening in late September, as an autumn rain began to drizzle outside, the phone rang, and on the other end I heard the agitated voice of Aunt Lisa. "Your mother still hasn't given up trying to reach you," she reported with a slight sigh. "She urgently asked me to tell you that she forgives you for all your actions and that you can come home any time as if nothing happened." I couldn't suppress a short, almost inappropriate laugh. "She forgives me," I repeated, feeling a wave of bitter irony rising in my chest. She's presenting this whole situation as if I had some kind of temporary breakdown that she magnanimously agrees to overlook, and it's just incredible how convenient this interpretation is for her. "She also asked if I knew whether you had already squandered all your money," Lisa continued, and her voice held regret. "It seems she cherishes the hope that you've spent every last cent and will now be forced to crawl back to them in disgrace, begging for shelter." "Well, she is cruelly mistaken," I replied firmly. "The money isn't just lying there dead, it's wisely invested. The foundation isn't just existing, but thriving. And most importantly, I feel happier than I have ever been in my life." "I know, dear," Lisa said softly. "I can hear it in every sound of your voice." After we finished talking, I went out into our cozy living room, where Michael was reading a book by the fireplace, and sat down next to him on the sofa. After the wedding, we, as planned, bought our own house, starting to build a common future as a real couple. It was a cozy and very comfortable apartment, not too big but not cramped, located in a quiet, shady neighborhood where we felt absolutely happy. "Turns out my mom has forgiven me," I told him, and he merely raised an eyebrow ironically in response. "How magnanimous of her, isn't it? She seriously seems to think I'll crawl to her doorstep as soon as I've spent every last dollar." "Do you feel even the slightest temptation to do so?" he asked softly, looking at me intently. "Even a little?" "Not a bit," I replied without a shadow of doubt. "I don't miss them. I don't even think about them, except for those rare moments when Aunt Lisa shares the latest news, and even then it's perceived simply as information, not something that stirs up a storm of emotions in my soul. I don't hate them. I don't wish them ill. I simply don't care. And that's probably the healthiest and most healing attitude one can have. The only thing I sometimes regret," I added quietly after a short pause, "is Jacob's children. They are certainly completely innocent in this whole story, but their parents made their own conscious choice, and I cannot and do not want to sacrifice my peace of mind and newfound happiness just because their father built unrealistic plans for money that never belonged to him in the first place." Michael gently hugged me, pulling me close, and his voice was quiet and convincing. "You created an entire foundation to help people exactly like them. Students who desperately need funding for education. You're helping dozens, hundreds of children get into colleges and universities. It's just that these aren't the children connected to you by blood ties." He was, as always, absolutely right. I was helping people, but only on my own terms, through transparent and clear channels. Those who were sincerely grateful for the help and didn't feel entitled to demand it. My life, looking back, had turned out really well. I had a loving husband who valued me for myself, not for my wallet. I had work filled with deep meaning and real positive change. I had loyal friends who sincerely cared about me. And finally, I had Aunt Lisa, the only person from my former family who had supported me, not in word, but in deed. I no longer needed my parents, brother, or sister. I didn't need their approval or participation. Yes, I had once hit an incredible jackpot in the lottery, but over time I realized that the real, most valuable prize was by no means those millions, but the freedom they granted, The freedom to build my life exclusively by my own rules, surrounded by people who value you not for something, but simply for who you are.